Great, so in this video, we're going to look at the first way by which firms can differentiate their product. Remember, vertical product differentiation, and that's what we're going to focus on now, horizontal product differentiation. And we'll do that using a model called the Bertrand model, named, of course, after their two inventors, or the people that first analyzed it, Harold Hotelling and Joseph Bertrand. Now, why are we doing this? We're doing this because it's fairly useful. It's actually fairly relevant for analyzing product differentiation and for the consequences in terms of prices and for the consequences in terms of the profits that firms make. Okay? And remember, where we're starting off with? We're starting off with the Bertrand paradox, which says that firms, under some assumptions, under reasonable assumptions, make zero profits, even if there's just two firms competing. So here's the setup of the Hotelling-Bertrand model. Let's put ourselves on the beach. So on the beach, we have consumers. So each of those green guys is a consumer, and they lie on the beach. Okay, so they're spread in equal distances, and they just sit there and enjoy, or lie there and enjoy. And they feel discomfort from walking. So they don't actually like walking over the hot sand, so it's sort of, yeah, not very nice. But at the same time, because it's sunny, they're into ice cream. Okay, and they would like to get some ice cream. Now, there are two ice cream sellers that sell the same ice cream and that are both located in the middle. So let's see what's going to happen to competition in this context. There's going to be severe price competition. It's fairly easy to imagine why, right? So if this person, let's say, this consumer, is going to go to the place where both A and B are selling their ice cream. At this point, once they got there, it's basically for the same if they go to A or if they buy from B. So this means that firm A, seller A, has an incentive to actually lower prices by a tiny amount. Because remember, this is the same ice cream, right? And this consumer already made his way over there. So there's a big incentive just to lower prices by a little bit and steal market share from product B. Of course, product B, seller B, is going to do exactly the same thing, so they're going to lower prices as well. So here, prices are going to go down. So what's going to happen? Prices by firm A are going to be equal to cost, and profits by firm A are going to be zero. Prices for firm B are going to be equal to their cost, and profits are going to be zero. In other words, we're back in the Bertrand paradox. So both firms make zero profits. Why? Because they're selling the same product at the same location. So there is no product differentiation. Now, seeing this situation, they're obviously not particularly happy. Neither firm A nor firm B is. So one thing that firm A might want to do is actually they might move a little bit further out. So here, how is this going to change things? How is this going to change the situation? Well, here, this consumer now has two options. He could either go to the ice cream seller who's close, or he could go to the ice cream seller that's further away. So he's going to find this one much more attractive. Imagine, or remember, he feels discomfort from walking, right? He doesn't want to walk very far. So going from here to there is more painful than going from here right next door to the closer seller. And in other words, this means that seller A can now charge a higher price than seller B and still sell to this consumer, and to this consumer, and to that consumer, because they have an even further way, a further distance to cover to seller B. So seeing that, firm B, seller B, might move out as well. Okay, so if he moves out as well, then he's going to have the same three consumers that basically would be much more interested in buying from seller B than buying from seller A. And basically competition only takes place for these two consumers, right? So there's competition here, but there's virtually no competition in these backyards for the two sellers. So this means that both firm A and firm B are going to get away with higher prices than their cost, and they're going to make positive profits. So price competition is actually reduced in this case. So we have less competition for consumers because now the products are differentiated. They're different from each other. Now, seeing that this really worked well, firm A, seller A, might move further away. And indeed, firm B, seller B, might also want to move further away. So what's going to happen here? Here, this person is as happy as can be because he's basically got an ice cream seller right next to him. This person too. This person, this consumer, would have to go a short distance to seller A, and he would go a massive distance to seller B. So he's going to find this one, he's going to find seller A much, much more attractive. So even if seller A charges a higher price than seller B, he's always going to go to B because he's so much closer. Okay? And you've got all these consumers, and basically we're going to split the market again. Everyone on the left side is going to go to A, everyone on the right side is going to go to B, but there's going to be even less competition. There's going to be further reduced price competition. And that's going to mean that both firm A and firm B are going to be able to charge much higher prices than marginal cost, and they're going to be able to get much higher profits than just zero profits. So what have we just seen? We started out from a situation that was effectively the Bertrand paradox. Right? Two firms selling identical products at the same location led to prices equal to cost and led to zero profits. Now, what were the factors that made it easier for firms to get positive profits? The distance of the sellers from each other. The further away firm B is from firm A, the more likely it is that a consumer is going to find it attractive, and a consumer who's closer to A than to B is going to find it attractive to buy from A. So he can get away with a higher price. The magnitude of the discomfort from walking also means that even small differences, small distances between the two are going to make the real difference between, or the actual difference between the two products very large. So the magnitude of the discomfort from walking is going to have another positive impact on profits. And finally, of course, the number of consumers along the beach, because the more consumers there are, the higher your profits are going to be. So the denser the market, the higher your profits are going to be. Now, is all competition going to take place between ice cream sellers on a beach? Definitely not. I mean, most of the examples that we've had throughout the course had nothing to do with ice cream and nothing to do with a beach. So, is this model useful even in different settings? Okay, in other words, can we reinterpret the parameters that we just discussed in a much broader sense? So what, for example, might the different location of sellers mean? Well, if sellers are located at different places, then they're just horizontally differentiated along one product dimension. Could be all sorts of things. Could be color, could be departure time, could be anything like that. So as long as there's one product dimension by which products are differentiated, then the different locations can be reinterpreted as that. The distance of sellers is simply the degree of differentiation of the product. Right? So if you have two very different colors, let's say, or if you have an early morning flight and a late night flight, these are very different products, okay, which means that the two are in less intense competition from each other. The position of a certain consumer, of a specific consumer along the beach, can be reinterpreted as the preference of this consumer regarding the product. In other words, if there is a product that's located right where I am, this is simply going to mean that I'm buying my ideal product. I'm buying the perfect product for myself. And finally, we've looked at the discomfort from walking, and that might be one that we have to work a bit harder in reinterpreting, but the discomfort from walking actually can be interpreted as the strength of the preference. So why is that? The discomfort from walking a distance means that I lose utility, so I'm worse off the further I go. And in other words, if I like black sweaters, but the only thing I can get is a white sweater, then my utility is going to be lower, much lower, than if I buy a dark gray sweater. And so the discomfort from walking is a measure of how much I lose, how much utility I lose if I get something that's not my ideal product. Okay, so in this video, we've looked at horizontal differentiation. We've looked at the Bertrand, at the Bertrand hoteling model, and we saw that differentiating your product horizontally can relax price competition, and by relaxing price competition, firms were able to move up in prices and move up in profits. So in other words, they can make positive profits if they differentiate their product. And remember, we started out when we had two identical products sold at the same place, and that was basically the same situation as in the Bertrand paradox, where prices were equal to marginal cost and were equal to, and profits were zero. So there's going to be a quiz on this. It's a fairly complex topic, of course, so do take the quiz, and then we'll meet back again for vertical differentiation. See you in a second.